this cloud of uncertainty off of us to the extent you think that that's even plausible? What does the timeline look like?
Listen, I think they are going to hustle and hustle and hustle to get some deals done. Japan maybe in the next few days, and then as many as they can. Each deal is complicated. It really is. And if we just took the minimum, if we just said we're going to go 10% to every country and walk away, which we're not going to do, but if we did that, it's still unbelievably complicated for companies. It changes every economic decision. And that would still create a shorter term stagflation. Like, we're going to have a price shock no matter what. So I won't call it inflation, I'll call it a price shock. And then we're probably going to have a deflation, right? Because we're going to see growth slow. It's really hard to see. I mean, tariffs are in some ways taxes that you pay up front, right? I've got to pay the tariff to get my product in before I sell my product. So I've got a problem with liquidity, right? I've already had 2 friends reach out to me for short-term loans on their small businesses because they got an unexpected $50,000 or $70,000 phone call.
That's nothing to you. But I want to ask you, so are you disappointed that Bitcoin has not been the safe trade in a declining dollar? Would you attribute it to, I mean, it's hard to say it's disappointing if you followed it when it's at 85,000, obviously. It was only, when was it at, it was at 17,000 a couple of years ago, Mike, I think. I mean, time is going very quickly. So I understand that. Yet, it just seems sometimes like it's more of a speculative risk-on, risk-off thing than what it's really made out to be in terms of a hard currency that when fiat looks like it's going to decline, you immediately run to this. They're running to the safety of gold, Mike. They're not running to the safety of Bitcoin right now. Is that disappointing to you? Pompliano said after gold moves, sometimes Bitcoin moves like a couple of months later, much more than gold, but it hasn't happened yet.
Good to see you, XRP Market.
We don't have the same built-in big institutional buyer of Bitcoin yet. We have some, and it was just starting. But so like the adoption cycle is just starting to accelerate into institutions. And let me tell you, institutions, what do when they see this kind of uncertainty? They go backwards, they pull in, right? They're not being aggressive. And so it's not a central bank's first move. Yes, there's been some sovereign wealth funds that have been buying Bitcoin, but it's not their first move. And so this, I think,
we want to thank you for joining us. Squawk Box coming right back after this.
Goldilocks needs a place of her own, and fast. Thankfully, she's on Redfin.
No way. Did you guys see that? It looks like we got Gary Gensler up next. Oh, man. I didn't know we were in for that kind of treat this morning. All right. That's going to be good. That's going to be really good. I didn't even know that was happening. There we go. Some good entertainment. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I had a nice, exciting morning of going and jumping my car and then dragging it to the shop to get a new battery. So good start to the day for me. Jerome Powell speaks today. Yeah, I mean, the speaking events, I don't know exactly what time he speaks, but typically the speaking events are not really a big event because people don't really care what he says. People care what he does. So it's not to say that there's not going to be anything interesting coming out of there. I'm sure there will be, but everyone's going to be like, everyone kind of takes what the Fed says at face value. It's like, all right, well, what's going to actually happen? So that event's happening. Could be interesting. Probably won't. I'm excited for this. I'm excited for this Gary CNBC on. I can't wait to ping over to that and see what he's got to say. 1:15 Eastern, yeah. There might be some interesting stuff in there, but I think a lot of people expect Jerome Powell to come out there and say something like new. They purposely script him to make sure he doesn't say anything new. So like he goes into that saying, okay, I'm not going to give the market pretty much anything except their talking points. But their talking points don't always align with policy, right? They want to try to talk the market into a certain direction and then come in with policy if they need to. So I listen to the Fed. I listen to these talks. I don't know if I very often get something that important or interesting from it. All right, looks like we're back on CNBC. Let's see if we got him.
I think we're still in, I don't know, it looks like a trading range to me. 432, Rick Santelli standing by at the CME in Chicago. Rick, about time for these numbers. And I'm going to hit you right at 8:30.
Yes, these in industrial production, auto tariffs were announced on March 26th. This is March data. We might start seeing some impact. Retail sales, the advanced look for March, exactly as expected, up 1.4%. Still don't see revisions, and do keep in mind, we want to see X autos. X autos, 0.5, a little better than anticipated. And even though it is a fraction of 1.4, it is obviously a pretty good number when you consider that it's the best number of the year. We had up 0.6. That was in December. And last month, in revisions coming in, last month was revised double plus from 0.3 to 0.7. And the reason I'm really concentrating on autos is that big ticket purchase item that many may be looking to get ahead of potential tariffs on, maybe a bit reflected in these numbers. Now let's strip out gas in addition to autos, and it's still really strong. Up 0.8, up 0.8. That would be the best number since SEP of last year when it was up 1.2, and that now equals our last look, another revision from 0.5% to up 0.8. And finally, the core number, the control number, input in other data like GDP, comes in on the light side, up 0.4. We're expecting a bit more horsepower there, but in the rearview mirror, up 1%, zooms up to 1.3. 1.3 would equal where we were in September. You have to go all the way back to Jan of 23 to find a higher number. So very positive revisions, positive headline number, maybe a little autos, kind of March 26, 25% tariff. Get ahead of that to some extent. We see Treasury yields haven't moved much. The yield curve has implications. Short-dated Treasury yields, most associated with the Fed, are down a handful right now at 380. You're only down 2 in a 10-year at 432. Couple of things real quick, guys. Bank of Canada at 9:45 today. They had a really, really weak jobs number on the 4th of April, down a little over 30,000. So many aren't expecting anything.
I just want to make something clear. No one DMing you about some return scheme is me. Be very careful about that, guys. Double check. There's people who do fake X accounts. It's different than the main X account. They typically don't have a verified badge. They typically don't have the correct amount of followers. So be very, very careful of that. No one is hitting your DMs, no matter if it's me or if it's anyone who has some kind of way to magically create XRP, and especially not reaching out to you on DMs trying to recruit you into whatever scheme they're doing. So very, very, very careful of that. Way, way, way too often people get sucked into that kind of stuff.
Show you a couple charts, not from this data, but from other data that kind of shows what's going on with the front running. First, you can look at autos, and what you see is autos on an annualized basis, they cranked.
All right, so this is something they do. They talk about Gary Gensler coming on, and then they go and talk about a whole bunch of boring data. I mean, the data came in good, which is good. It's nice to see the data coming in good. A lot of people have been saying forever that tariffs were going to be the thing that slow down spending because no one's going to spend, but people are still spending. Prices haven't gone up in inflation. So it just doesn't seem like to me right now most of these economists are getting it right. Gary's 8:40, so we got about 4 minutes here on Gary. So we'll shoot over to Gary at 8:40. I have a feeling they're going to be talking about a whole lot of nothing until that happens. So we'll hold off for Gary on this. They're just going to keep talking about these retail sales. Honestly, the numbers are good. People keep they've been forecasting a recession for the past ever. Like every single year they're predicting a recession. We're yet to see it. Technically, we did have some sort of paper recession, but oh, thank you, Taylor. Appreciate that. Could you explain why Swift would still need to facilitate cross-border payments? Couldn't that be done using XRP stablecoins, blockchain, eliminating the need for Swift? Yeah, it's a great point. And a great question. The thing is like a lot of the people who work with Swift aren't going to move their business overnight. A lot of them will probably take years to move to a new platform. So you have to realize, and I don't know if anyone here works in a Fortune 500 company, but like even to change like a video conferencing app or even to get anything done, it takes weeks upon months upon very, very large amounts of time because they need to renegotiate new contracts. They have to train everyone. They have to integrate. Like there's so many things that need to be done. And for a lot of people, they're already plugged into Swift for doing that. And switching over isn't necessarily something. Yeah, no, we're back. We should have some pretty decent consistency. Getting back in the groove, absolutely. So for a lot of people, it just doesn't make a whole lot of. It's hard to just drop someone like Swift and move something to something else overnight. That's why I think it's highly likely, and I talked about in my video last night, that Swift will likely just integrate with Ripple and make that one of the settlement options on the network. I think that's a lot more realistic. I think that's what would help a lot of companies the most. All it takes is working in any kind of large industry and seeing how slow they change software, how slow things get upgraded, to know that a lot of companies are going to be using Swift, even though they might not need to. It's just something large companies do. Yeah, they don't want to spend the money to upgrade the system. They don't want to go out and train new people. Like there's a lot of work to like upgrading to a new platform. And not to say that people won't do it. People will absolutely do it. But there is a reason why some would say, okay, well, we're going to start working on this in the background. But in the meantime, if we can just go use instant settlement through the Swift platform, then they don't have to really change anything. They just have a new feature unlocked on Swift. So Swift also has a lot of the a big network effect. So Swift has a massive network effect. Purge Zombies says it's been 15 years. You still need more time to integrate. Well, it hasn't been 15 years of them taking anything seriously. I mean, most of the big institutions are just taking this stuff seriously now. And for a lot of the big institutions, they just haven't started any of this. It's not, if they'd already started, it'd be a completely different scenario. But a lot of them haven't even looked at cryptocurrency for payments. I think a lot of people out there think that there's just everyone's just knocking on the door, integrating this stuff as fast as possible. And they've been doing so for the last 15 years. No, a lot of them are realizing now that they're kind of missing the boat here and they need to go do something quickly to be able to catch up. Halls Vols, good to see you, man. Dave Nelson, Swift is basically a whole load of banks headed by JP Morgan. They will go away. They will only go away once they're ready. Yeah, I completely agree. And I believe there's a lot of opportunity to add instant settlement and for Ripple and Swift to work together. I think that makes a ton of sense. I just don't think it's going to be like, all right, we wake up and suddenly everyone's off Swift and everyone's using Ripple. I think it makes a lot more sense for Ripple to get their tentacles into as many different payment softwares as possible. And then people would default through that payment software to be able to use Ripple's network for instant settlement. And if it happens the other way around, I'll be a very happy person. But I know how slowly those big corporations move. Very, very slowly. And that's sort of one of those things that makes this more interesting, right? How is that integration going to start happening? Because if the better technology is there, people are going to find themselves to that technology. But the real question is sort of how do they do that? I think we've got Gary here. Let's see if coming up. I don't know what that means. It's supposed to be time. They're going to do another commercial. I love that. They do a whole batch of commercials. They ping over to say, we've got Gary Gensler coming, and then they ping back to commercials. Still missing regulation. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we need regulation we don't even have stable coins in the United States, let alone market infrastructure. So there's just a lot of things that need to get done. And I'm pretty confident it's going to get done over the next couple of years here. It seems like we're in a really good place for that. But a lot of financial institutions, right, they're still waking up to this. And a lot of people think that all these financial institutions, they are just like, oh, well, yeah, we've been working on this for the past 10 years. I'll tell you right now, there might be a couple in that boat, but a lot of them have been blindsided by the success of crypto. Thank you, Chipper. Appreciate that. No, I'll definitely stick around. I'm not going anywhere. Do you think it would already be happening if we, the retail public, weren't involved? No, I actually think the retail helps a lot because retail has driven up the price of these cryptocurrencies and made these institutions take notice, and they've added a lot of mind share. If it wasn't for retail, I think a lot of the financial institutions would just kind of balk at the idea and say, yeah, no, we're not going to touch this. I think retail has really built up a lot of the volume, built up the prices, built up all of that. And that's been important to push financial institutions to do it. So I actually think retail has actually greatly accelerated it. And it's one of those things where now retail knows there's the capability. Crypto Clay, good to see you. A lot of people know that retail has the capability to do instant settlement. And now the financial institutions are probably feeling like their architecture is lagging. So yeah, I do think retail has exponentially accelerated the adoption. I don't think it's slowing it down. Here we go. It looks like we're right on cue for a little Gary action. So I'll start queuing this up and we'll be ready as soon as he comes on to start broadcasting that. This should be interesting. A little bit surprised today. Guys, make sure if you're here right now, make sure to smash the like button. Really appreciate everyone doing that. Don't worry, I've got this Gary interview coming, but do me a favor, go smash the like button. Helps so much. And here we go. It looks like we're pretty much there.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. As the trade war between the U.S. and China escalates, Florida Republican Senator Rick Scott now calling upon the SEC to delist Chinese companies. Joining us in an exclusive interview to discuss this and so much more. It's his first time speaking out since leaving office. Former SEC Chair Gary Gensler. Gary, great to have you on the broadcast. And I'll start with what Rick Scott is talking about. How do you feel about the role of the SEC being used in the way that Rick Scott is effectively asking for?
First, it's great to be back with you, Andrew and Joe. I miss Becky, but good to see you, Kelly, and all of your viewers. Look, it's a privilege to be in the U.S. markets. We have the deepest, most liquid markets. They've been very choppy recently, as you know, because of all the policy uncertainty. But China, for 20 years, was not really following our rules. But we were successful in a bipartisan way with Senator Rick Scott. He and I used to talk on occasion about this, with a lot of success with other senators as well, negotiating with China that they behaved and they followed the rules. And we treated China with respect but with firmness. And as long as I was there, they entered into a 50-page agreement, and they have been abiding by those agreements.
So, Gary, you've negotiated with the Chinese before. To the extent that you can try to put your head in their head, how do you see all of this playing out as it relates to tariffs?
I spent a lot of time with their Ministry of Finance and their senior financial regulators, and I think it's not going to end well, Andrew. I think it's going to be a bit of a quagmire. My experience is that they're tough negotiators, don't get me wrong, and they're looking out for their advantage. But the best way to handle that situation is to be consistent, to be honorable and treat them with dignity, and to take the toughest messages private and one-on-one. And I will tell you this, when they see inconsistency in policy, they tend to veer back. They lean back and they don't like to engage. And they sort of think that time is on their side. I'm not saying it always is, but that's how they think, is time's on their side, and they can outweigh the volatility of the policy on the other side. So that's why consistency, respect, but yes, firmness is important.
In terms of leverage, to the extent we have any, how important is it to go to them with allies? Trump, Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, they're meeting with the Japanese today. To the extent that the U.S. can form some kind of deals with a handful of countries, does that change the dynamic? And do you think, I mean, as it relates to our other allies, that if you're Canada right now or you're the EU, that you're going to say, sure, I'll make a deal with you and I'll pay your tariff, as it relates to then going and working against the Chinese?
Look, I get on some level that, of course, elections have consequences, and this president wants to adjust our trade relations around the globe, that it's been non-reciprocal trade and wants to balance it up. But doing an all-of-the-above strategy, trying to do it with 150 or 200 countries, and doing it so aggressively and so jarringly at one time is like a home field goal, a self-inflicted injury. I do think allies are deeply important, as you said, but I don't think it's going to be that easy. I think 90 days to kind of negotiate with dozens of countries, big consequential agreements, and then China's watching all this. And don't forget the real instability for businesses and thinking about their investments. They're pulling back. They have to be much more careful about their investments. And then don't forget about the deep instability in the stock market and the U.S. Treasury markets. And those are some of our considerations, of course, as our economy weakens and our markets are far more uncertain.
Let me ask you a different question. There has been lots of, not just speculation, but we'll call it speculation for now, about potentially folks in Washington, government officials, maybe people in the administration, maybe others, I don't know, and whether they have been trading on or have been aware of things that this administration might be trying to do as it relates to tariffs.
Oh, my God.
You're somebody who ran the SEC. You and I have talked about this topic at great length. I always thought that it would be great for the SEC to look at these things because I thought there's a way to create credibility for the government. I think you've always felt that it was harder for the SEC to do it because effectively your budget is set by Congress.
Well, Andrew, I think our capital markets work best when the public, the investors, think that nobody else has an edge. I mean, they might do better research, but they don't have an insider information edge. And that's critical. And I think trusting government similarly. And I think it's really critical that folks don't trade on inside information, particularly those, whether it be in Congress or be in the executive branch or the judiciary. That's a really critical thing. Yes, the Securities and Exchange Commission from time to time investigates government officials, whether it be in the judiciary, Congress, or executive, about insider trading. They're hard investigations, but I do think it's really critical to our confidence in our government and our confidence in the markets.
So when you see news that somebody like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene disclosed that she ended up purchasing tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars of stock on April 8th and 9th, this is the day before President Trump made the announcement pausing the global tariffs, and then also bought, it looks like, I'm sorry, dumped some Treasury bonds during this period. What do you think, and do you think that the SEC should be investigating what government officials are doing? Does knowing what the president may or may not do constitute inside information?
Well, I'm not going to comment on any one member of Congress and anyone.
Oh, there we go.
You're not the head of the SEC. You can say whatever you want.
But I'm going to say what I want here.
Okay.
I think it would be best for the American public, and Congress has considered this over the years, to actually take a real look, Congress take a real look, and self-impose some restrictions. We at the Securities and Exchange Commission self-imposed. We went beyond the government ethics rules and self-imposed on ourselves restrictions on people like myself or Paul Atkins, who's going to take the honor and the oath of office shortly, to trade on individual securities. We weren't able to do that. I think that's a way to better instill confidence in your government and in the markets, and then you wouldn't have these questions about individual members of Congress.
What is your confidence or lack of confidence that right now insider trading or other laws that the SEC would effectively oversee corporations are going to be enforced during this administration?
I think it's a challenge. The Securities and Exchange Commission, a great agency, when I got there had shrunk a little bit from 4 years earlier, about 5%, and we just grew it back to where it was in 2016. They have now shrunk it considerably. It's about 20% smaller. I think that's hard. I think that's hard. It's a cop on the beat, and markets work best when you have that cop on the beat. Just like the highways, we do need traffic lights and we do need cops. So to your question, I think the market just inevitably, when the agency's 20–25% smaller, is going to be less policed, less overseen for fraud, manipulation, insider trading, and things like that. And I think corporate issuers will get their questions answered a lot slower. It's a really, listen, it's part of the secret sauce of American success in our markets, and I think your viewers benefit by a fully staffed Securities and Exchange Commission.
Have you weighed in on prediction markets? You know, when Robin, so they've prediction markets, super popular, obviously. We all like to look at them, you know, who's going to win president and what's going to happen, whatever the case may be. Now they're on Robinhood. You can bet on sports outcomes. It's kind of getting you close to the sports betting piece of it. But prediction markets would be kind of a fun to look. It'd be fun if CNBC could host prediction markets. You know, should we be able to? Should they be broadly legal in this country?
Well, Kelly, I used to be honored to chair another agency, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and we took a lot of look at that 10, 15 years ago, and I know more recently. And I think that it does help people hedge certain risk. If you're hedging a risk of weather events and you're hedging a risk with regard to non-traditional financial risks and so forth.
Can it just be fun? Do you have to even hedge a risk? Could I just spend $1 saying this is what I think is going to happen with, I don't know, March Madness?
Dictator risk? Which we had in the last election. Right?
No, I understand that. I think that it can be fun. I get it, and it can be fun. And following sports is a wonderful pastime. But I think you also have to be careful against manipulation in those markets, people being taken advantage of, and then, of course, the integrity of the game itself. Now, an important thing is the integrity of politics.
On the Robinhood app.
The integrity of politics.
The integrity of sports is unclear in the era of sports betting, so it seems that regulators have had no problem kind of letting these ships sail and trying to clean it up in the aftermath. But again, you can, on the Robinhood app, I mean, you can go do this now.
No, I understand, and these have been debates for many decades. I think that it's a balancing for the sports leagues, the balancing of bringing fan enthusiasm, fan interest in to the game, and versus the integrity of the game to ensure that it's still, fairly competed on a field of their choice. I worry about it more as it relates to politics and the integrity of politics, the integrity of picking our national leaders. And whether you're Republican or Democrat, whether you're conservative or liberal, just the importance of the integrity of our democracy.
Hey, Gary, final question for you. As you probably watched, so many CEOs were doing almost victory laps in the crypto world as these enforcement cases were dropped by this current administration of cases, of course, cases that you had brought. As you watched that, what did you think?
Look, I'm going to step back a little bit from any individual cases and just say this again to your viewing public. This is a very small part of the financial markets, but if you were interested in this, think about every financial asset sort of trades on a bit of fundamentals and sentiment. But this field is almost 99, or maybe one might say 100% sentiment and very little on fundamentals. And while something like Bitcoin may persist for a long time because there's 7 billion people around the globe, a real keen interest in it, there's 10 or 15,000 others of these tokens. And to think through your own risk, your own personal risk, about where are the fundamentals, and if this is just about sentiment, then generally those don't end up well, and most then go down.
Are you talking, you're contrasting Bitcoin with the other ones, or they're all the same?
Joe, I'm glad that you spoke up because I know you're a bit of a Bitcoin enthusiast and think less well of the rest of those. It's how you and I have always connected in the green rooms. But think of these 10 or 15,000 other tokens, and just on the economics, just on the fundamentals, what are the fundamentals?
No, I know, but that was my question. You throw Bitcoin in with the rest of them, or you think Bitcoin is different is qualitatively different than the others?
I think there's the distinction is similar to in metals. There's only 2 or 3 precious metals. We humans have a certain fascination with 2 or 3 precious metals like gold. I don't think we humans will have a fascination with 10 or 15,000 meme or sentiment tokens trading over the years.
Gary, I wanted to actually ask you something different, which is you're teaching AI now, and one of the things...
All right, well, we did get some cryptocurrency talk. Overall, kind of what I expected. I was wondering if they're going to drill him a little bit more on that. I mean, he just dodges everything, so at the end of the day, nothing overly surprising. Sorry, guys. I know a lot of people hated listening to Gary Gensler, but to be honest, I find it extremely interesting. It's great to be able to hear people talk about anything. Given where he's coming from, I was honestly hoping he'd get drilled a bit more, but it is over. No other reason to freak out there. Wanted to share this real quick. It looks like XRP is heavily leading the way. ETFs, 10 XRP ETFs. The next closest is Solana with 5. So the XRP ETFs have honestly been significantly larger than Solana, which is what a lot of people didn't think was going to happen, which is cool to see. And, it doesn't seem like there's much else going on in the market. So with that said, I'm going to cut it off here. Guys, I know today was a short one. Not a whole lot going on. The Gary Gensler thing was interesting to watch. I know a lot of you hated it. So I promise no Gary Gensler tomorrow. Guys, thank you so much for coming. Sorry for today being a little short. Got some things I've got to go attend to, but I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.